Hello, and welcome to this presentation on formal arguments, components, and properties. This presentation is meant as an introduction to formal logical systems. What is a formal argument? A formal argument is a series of claims that leads via induction or deduction to a conclusion. When you're dealing with an inductive argument, you're dealing with one that is concerned with chances and percentages. The conclusion of inductive arguments is a matter of likelihood. Deductive arguments, on the other hand, deal with causality and certainty. Both inductive and deductive arguments rely on a system known as logic. Specific arguments can be evaluated based on their form, how they fit into this system, and how the system applies to them. For our purposes, we'll be focusing only on deductive argument. There are several components of an argument. The two main components are premises and the conclusion. Premises act as evidence behind an argument. They establish the knowns of an argument, or the claims that an argument establishes being known. Usually the premises are explicit. They are out in the open and clear to see. But be mindful for premises that are implied and not explicitly stated. The concepts contained within the premises will link together with other ones to move to a conclusion. The conclusion is the proposition that the argument tries to prove. In deductive reasoning, the conclusion comes as a direct result of the premises interacting together. Typically, a conclusion is denoted with a therefore or other such language indicating consequence. You can reach a conclusion by analyzing how the premises function together. There are three properties that we need to be concerned about when looking at arguments. The property of truth is one that is a property of the premises of an argument. When we are looking for validity or form, we assume that all the premises provided to us are true. Because if all the premises in an argument are true, and they lead to a conclusion, we will have a sound argument. Again, the truth property is one we are only concerned about in propositions. When we are evaluating whether an argument follows the correct form or not, we are looking for validity. And when we look for validity, we will assume the premises that are given to us are true. Validity is a property of arguments that makes the premises lead to the conclusion. If the premises invariably lead to the conclusion, an argument is considered valid. You do not need to have true premises for an argument to be valid. Validity is only concerned with whether or not the conclusion comes as a result of those premises. Finally, soundness is a property of the entire argument. An argument is sound when the form is valid and the premises are all true. Soundness is the goal of argumentation. To prove an argument unsound, one must demonstrate that the form is invalid or that one of the premises is false. As we move forward, we will be focusing on proving a form valid. As a system, there are many correlations and analogies to be made between logic and other systems such as mathematics. In this series of videos, we will be focusing on one type of logic known as sentential logic. It is no coincidence that this is also known as propositional calculus. Like math, logic looks for how operators interact with value to create understanding. While math has an infinite potential of values and numerical value, logic looks at the truth value of claims and only has two values, true or false. To understand the form behind propositions, in sentential logic we break claims down to their most basic simple sentences, one subject and one predicate for each sentence. For reasons that will become clear later, these simple sentences must not contain a negative clause. Here are some examples. If I were to say the statement, if Tom and Sally go out for lunch, they must cook dinner themselves. There are 4 simple sentences involved in that concept. One is that Tom goes out for lunch. Another is that Sally goes out for lunch. Yet another is that Tom must cook dinner. And finally, Sally must cook dinner. Notice that for every subject, we have a matching predicate. Whenever we have a predicate that applies to more than one subject, we make sure that we distill the information so that we have one subject applying to the predicate. Here's another example. If Jim doesn't show up for his shift, Bill will have to stay late. Here we have 2 simple sentences. The concept that Jim shows up for his shift and the concept that Bill will have to stay late. Notice that we did not include the not in the Jim shows up for his shift variable. When we move to operators, you will see that not is actually an operator that helps us understand whether or not a proposition is true. We'll get to that in a future lesson. Another thing you should pay attention to is that the variables must be different from each other. It does not help us if we have 2 J's and we do not know which J is which. As we begin to look at form, we will use lowercase letters to denote when the variable has no set meaning, and capital letters to signify that a meaning has been assigned. In the next lesson, we will cover operators and how simple sentences combine to form complex propositions. Here are a few benefits of studying formal argument. Studying formal argument helps in developing an argument and understanding complexity of issues. It also helps in evaluating and potentially disproving the arguments of others. In asserting whether or not to take a stance on a position. It helps in recognizing formal logical fallacies that may fool someone unaware of the rules that they exploit. It helps in recognizing and analyzing advanced rhetorical techniques like enthymeme, where premises are not explicitly stated. It also helps in identifying what warrants and backing needs to be made explicit for an argument to display its validity. Here's what I expect you to gather from our studies into formal logic. I want you to have a general understanding of how the system of logic functions. I'd like for you to be aware that there are multiple ways to approach an argument for evaluation or for countering. I want you to use your understanding of the logical system in order to compose an argument in a way that will be persuasive to an audience by virtue of its soundness. I do not expect you to memorize all the forms representing the system of logic. You will not be expected to perform on any sort of test or examination to demonstrate mastery of these skills. I do not expect you to present arguments only in formal mode without exception. You made it to the end of this video. I'll see you next time.